My name is Ricardo Rivero. I'm from Miami, Florida, and my story begins with a child support court. My son's mom calls me up and says, "Hey, I'm gonna take you to child support court," which I agreed to it, and it was fine and dandy. So Montana gives me a call. She moved to Montana. Montana's gonna start child support, and everything was fine and dandy. I said, "Well, me and her had a child." She called me a month later and told me that she was pregnant. So I said, okay, I filled out the paper to Montana and I asked for a blood test. When we enter the court system, Montana tells me no, over the phone. They're not going to give me a blood test. I signed the birth certificate, so the child's mine, which they waived my rights. They said, no, you're not allowed a blood test. So Montana hits me with child support for $121 a month. And for the first 3 months, it's going to be $283. But after 3 months, it will go back down to $121, which is what they considered a catch-up period from when they came at me, sort of like an arrears. No time at all did it go down back to the 121. They kept charging me $283. They kept billing me with that. It was monitored by the United States Federal Probation Office because I came out of federal prison. So me and my son's mom, we speak on the phone. A year later, we decide we're going to work it out for the child's sake, and which would be good because I get to grow up with my child and see what it's like. And so we start living together, and in 2004, she has an affair with my boss. So she has a daughter from a previous marriage, and she tells me, listen, I leave the house, and I said, I'm going back to Miami. We were living in Sarasota, Florida at the time of that, when that took place. When I moved back to Miami, she says, hey, do you love my daughter? And I said, yes, I love your daughter. She's a great kid, and I'll try to do whatever I can to help her, if she ever needs me as, a friend. She goes, well, why don't you pay child support if you really love her? And I said, well, Sheila, she's not my daughter. To where she goes then and goes into the child support office, which I get in the mail, and they're coming after me for child support from Sarasota, Florida. And they're hitting me with four years of back payment child support, stating that they're moving on a Montana order. So they contact me and say, do you have an order from Montana? And I said, yes, and I paid my child support. It was documented by the Federal Probation Office. They said, no, we have your Montana record and you owe $14,150 in arrears. I said, no, something's wrong. So they issued the first court date. Before the court date, I contacted the United States Federal Probation Officer, Ashley Coxwell, who was my officer when I was on supervised release. He sends me several documents stating that, that they monitored me, that I was on child support, and that the federal government is my witness. When we enter the first courtroom, I come with a whole bunch of receipts, money orders, showing that I paid child support, and I told the judge, I say, Your Honor, the other child support, the Federal Probation Office has it because now I'm paying child support. It's a violation of probation. The judge then looks at this order and says, well, we're moving on an order from Montana, and the Montana order shows zeros. Now, it was crazy because I kept telling her, listen, I have an order from Montana that has that the payments were made. So I contact Montana. Montana says, Mr. Rivero, you don't owe us anything. Your case has been closed with us since 2001, almost 2002. And I said, well, Sarasota's saying that I owe money for child support. They said, we don't have anything to do with whatever Sarasota's doing, which sounds very funny to me. So I take all my papers to a forensic investigator, corporate accountant. And he says, man, I see what's going on with you, Ray Horton. I'm going to check out your papers for free. Well, as you see, what Sarasota's moving on, it's an order, not from Montana, but from Miami. It has her ex-husband, the daughter's father's, his case number right across the top, and says he never paid child support because he disowned the daughter. They billed me for it. So when I go into the second court, I tell the judge, Your Honor, I paid my money. The order from Montana will show it. I don't have this order. Montana's telling me they have nothing to do with what Sarasota's doing. She goes, well, there's something wrong with the order because Mr. Rivero showing payments. She asked Sheila Leo 3 times, when you were in Montana under oath, did you receive any money? 2 of the times she said no. Then the 3rd time, she says, okay, I did, but maybe for 1 month. The magistrate then says to the state attorney, who was Dave Taylor, he says he's on behalf of the Department of Revenue. He's Dave Taylor from the state attorney's office. But then I said, well, I send the federal probation file to your office. He goes, no, you send it to the Department of Revenue. I'm not with them. So throughout the whole court thing, this guy jumps back and forth. He doesn't know who he's working for, but he's calling Sheila Leo on the telephone, on her cell phone, and they're hanging out. He's an older gentleman. So then the Montana order, the judge says, there's something wrong with this order. The order keeps showing zeros, and Mr. Rivero now says he has proof of payments. The federal probation office sent them papers to the courts and said that they have proof of payments. And Sheila Leo now is stating that she received payments, but the order keeps showing 0, and the order has Humberto Echeverria's case number on it. So then they go back and they falsified some documents. Here on Exhibit B, that was done by the forensic investigator corporate accountant. They say this is an order from Montana showing I'm in arrears $14,150. So they're going by another guy's case number, not the case number that I have, and they're saying that it's a Montana order. Here goes Exhibit C. Once again, Sarasota case number, Montana documents, stating it's $14,150 of back payment child support. Another falsified document. So then what happens? We have Exhibit D. I grab that guy's papers. I go and I call the Florida, Harvey Rubin, Miami. I call their courthouse and I said, yeah, this case number right here, which is 99 DI, is this? Oh, I can't even see it. 8, what is this, Jesse? What's this case number?
199-014-859-FC-04.
That's the case number they're charging me with. When I go to the Miami courthouse, Harvey Rubin's courthouse, I hand them the documents. They hand me Humberto Echeverria's case. So I go through the case and I make 5 copies of it. I hand it to my son. Yes, my son, because he was living with me. He runs out the courthouse. I stay with 1. When I give it to the lady, she says, you need to sign for this. I sign Ricardo Rivero, not Humberto Echeverria. She snatches it and says, hey, please tell me that you're Humberto Echeverria. I said, no, ma'am, I'm Ricardo Rivero. She goes, oh, my goodness, Sarasota has been charging you with this guy's case. And I said, well, I've been saying that since day 1. Here goes the guy's case with his case number. Humberto Echeverria, Sheila Echeverria, Daniela Echeverria, his daughter. As we proceed, here goes the same case number on his case that I managed to get from the Miami courthouse. With 25 cents, all they had to do was call that case number and figure out you're charging me with the wrong case. Remember the arrears? 0 with the guy's case number right on the top? That's what they were charging me with, stating that this is an order from Montana. So all these papers that say Montana $14,150, they were falsified documents. They used this guy's arrears to charge me with some papers that they said were from Montana, $14,150. So then I keep contacting Montana and I said federally subpoena them. I filed a federal lawsuit against them. After years of fighting them in state court, I filed 4 motions of 12.540, allowing the judges grace and escape, giving them a chance to cure their defects, which they keep denying it, and they keep saying, no, I got a 6th grade education. They deny me a reader. The Mrs. Pavillon from the Department of Revenue tells me, Mr. Rivero, who's doing your motions? We know you can't read and write. You know, I said it on the Americans with Disabilities. I can't read and write. I got a 6-year education. The judge says, oh, you'll do fine. You're going to be fine. She says, Mr. Rivero, it doesn't fall in the same thing. Somebody's writing your motions. We know you can't read and write, but do you know numbers? 1, 2, 3, 4. Pay the money. Who's this gentleman next to you? I said, he's an ex-friend and he's going to be a reader for me. She goes, no, Your Honor, it's not in the same alphabet. And you can't have a reader. So she denied me that right under the Americans with Disabilities as well. So Montana then, Dave Lauderman, writes me this letter. He says, Mr. Rivero, I sent this letter to Sheila Leal. He told her, Sheila Leal, both parties were served. The money was collected. You know, what's the problem? He sends me this letter. Along with this letter, the Montana case number, which belonged to me. Here goes the payment histories. With the Montana case number. The payments were received. Never did they charge me the 121. They always charged me 283. All the payment history that was received in Montana throughout the whole time. Montana keeps stating, we have nothing to do with what Sarasota's doing. We're not involved. Here goes in 2002. Case for Montana was closed. So now Sarasota has reopened up a case that was closed using somebody else's case number and illegally charging me with his case number, with his arrears. Like I said, it would have only taken a 25-cent call to Miami to notice that you charged me with the wrong case number. I subpoenaed the federal officer Ashley Coxwell to come give testimony on my case. He came with the whole United States federal probation file. Here he writes on his letter, 2 times he came to testify. He was subpoenaed to testify, and 2 times the judges and magistrate blocked him from entering the courtroom. They would not let a federal officer give testimony on the record because they knew they were committing a crime. He was blocked from giving testimony that I lived with Sheila throughout the whole time that she was claiming, and that they received the money, and they had all the paycheck stubs, because we fill out a monthly report and we have to put in all our check stubs that are paid. Child support was paid. It would have been a violation of probation if I didn't pay the child support, since Montana made the order without giving me a blood test. So they blocked the federal officer from giving testimony on the record twice. This is the blood test where I asked Montana. I said, if the child was mine, I want a blood test. And I want his name to be changed back because she was married to another man when she was living in Montana, and his last name was Biscaleaf. And she was using my son as the last name of Biscaleaf. That's why I asked her for a blood test, because I wanted to know if somebody else was his father. So all this came into play after 8 years of fighting them suspending my license. They made me and my son homeless. They took my passport. I couldn't work. I couldn't do anything. Having all the evidence, they refused me several times of an evidentiary hearing. They refused to let the federal government come into the court and testify on my behalf. They refused everything. They tampered with the docket. My Sarasota docket, somebody in the clerk's office put case filed in error, wrong case, error, wrong docket code, wrong case filed in error, wrong case number. So they knew what was going on since 2004. Now if you look at the new case number, it's clean. They took all the wrong case numbers off of it. So I filed a federal lawsuit for $50 million in Miami, Florida, in federal court. I have all the evidence. So I figure, okay, this is going to be fine. It's walk in the park. You know, what they did was wrong. These judges were crooked. I hired an attorney when I was in Sarasota. It lasted 1 month. He named Jeffrey Klinger. He comes in there. He tells me, Mr. Rivero, these judges are crooked. These magistrates are crooked. Man, you're in the most crookedest court there is, Sarasota. Soon as he walks in, he's shaking everybody's hand. Hey, Jeffrey, hey, how's it going, man? I was doing better fighting it as a pro se, but I gave it a chance. $2,500 retainer fee. I borrowed the money. Jeffrey Klinger goes in there. He knows everybody. We go into the court. We're in front of the magistrate for my passport and license. Jeffrey Klinger looks at me. He looks at her. I said, Jeffrey, tell her about my license. She said, Mr. Rivero, sit down. You have counsel now. So then Jeffrey says, Your Honor, we're going to go for his license and passport. She goes, no, we're not granting it. And I go, it's a federal offense for you to take my passport anyway. You're charging me with somebody else's crime. She goes, Mr. Rivero, no more outbursts. You have counsel. He looks at me. He looks at her. He goes, Your Honor, it's a federal offense for you to take his passport. She goes, well, I'm going to grant the passport. He goes, listen, about the license, if you start giving them $50 towards the arrears, even though you don't owe the money, we have the evidence. We filed the evidence in the Sarasota case. Even though you don't owe the money, give them $50 towards the arrear, and I'll get you your license. I can work out a deal with them to get you your license, and then you fight them later for the money they took from you. You know, the $15,000, because by that time, the arrears were stacked up to $22,000. I said, Jeffrey, isn't that an admission of guilt? If I didn't owe the child support and the child support was paid and then my son came to live with me, she's using somebody else's case number. Isn't that an admission of guilt for me to pay the $50? He looks at me. He looks at the judge. We get out there. He tells me, man, these judges are crooked. This court's crooked. A week later, I hear Jeffrey Klinger's off the case. I call the courts. He filed a private letter with the judges. They had a private meeting. And they let him withdraw from the case. He walked right away. I was like, wow. So the lawyer thing, it's not going to happen. They're going to play ball. So I did better as fighting it as a pro se litigate. Filed a federal lawsuit, $50 million, fighting it with in front of Judge Gold. Civil case. Went pretty good in the beginning, but every time I put in a motion, they strike it back. They never denied all the evidence. All they would say was, motion to dismiss, motion to dismiss, motion to dismiss. They never said anything that I was stating about them was wrong. One guy's defending the Department of Revenue, all 4 judges who are ex-judges now. They all took off running. I had to get the marshals to serve them as attorneys because the Florida bar finally said, go get the crooked judges. Judicial qualifications wouldn't do nothing. The FBI wouldn't do nothing. Nobody would do nothing. Finally, they all got served. They're being defended by the state attorney's office. Dave Taylor. No, it's Mr. Fallbush. I've had several lawyers when I walk in look and say, what is this? This guy can't defend all these people. It's against the law. It's against the law. He can't defend all the same people. You know, all these departments, all these judges. But no lawyer would take the case. But they tell me, hey, man, you've been through a lot. You've contacted every member of Congress. You've done everything. I have letters from everybody. Every judicial qualification. But nobody wants to do anything. The FBI, Congress, nobody. So now, Judge Gold closes my case with prejudice. I had no choice but to appeal my case. All the evidence is on the record. All the evidence is filed in the case, but they wouldn't give me an evidentiary hearing even in federal court. So I appeal it because Judge Gold is not an accountant. And if he's not an accountant, then he can't make rulings on account matters. And Mr. Ray Horton made the accountant findings on my case and proved to them that the accounts were wrong. You charged me with somebody else's case. And he explains it on there. Let me go right to it. Sorry. This is Mr. Ray Horton, forensic accountant, investigator, corporate accountant. This was his findings. He found everything to be in error. This is the second page as a corporate accountant. So when Judge Gold closes my case, I appeal it to the U.S. Courts of Appeal. 3 judges said, I'm an upset father who failed to fulfill his obligations. My obligations? You charged me with another guy's child support. You got the wrong kid. What obligations? You know, I mean, would you want to be charged with somebody else's kid? Somebody else's child support? Somebody else's crime, case number? When I fulfilled my obligations, this is Ray Horton's findings. So it left me no choice. When the U.S. Attorney's Office, the U.S. Courts of Appeal denied me, they wanted me to appeal their decisions. So I went certiorari to the Supreme Court, attaching the evidence, and letting the Supreme Court that they denied me an evidentiary hearing, which I'm entitled. They're going to close the case with prejudice without giving me an evidentiary hearing and allow me to put the evidence on the record. What are they hiding? My case has been with the Supreme Court for over 11 months now. Every time I call the Supreme Court, they say, Mr. Rivero, we have a case analyst looking over your case. Your case is in the hands of the case analysis. I guess they're checking out the case. So when the U.S. Courts of Appeal find out that I went certiorari and didn't try to appeal to them because they were going to try to deny me and waste time, they send the whole case back down. The attorney asked for attorney fees, so they send the whole case back down to the U.S. to the Miami courts, the lower courts again. Which everybody was saying, how did your case do that? Your case went from the lower courts in Miami, federal courts, to the U.S. Courts of Appeal. When you went certiorari to the Supreme Court, the U.S. Courts of Appeal send your case back down to the lower courts to rule on attorney fees. So when they did that, I had all the evidence put in on a proffer of evidence, labeled nicely and put there. So I filed in the proffer of evidence. Now Judge Gold tells the magistrate, McCallie, you have to make a ruling on this proffer of evidence according to law. It's been 6 months and I still haven't got the ruling from the magistrate, but don't believe in laws, but let's see what's going to happen. They can't say the evidence isn't on the record now. I believe in 2000, before I entered the child support arena, I thought judges are fair. Judges are respectful men. They have honor, integrity. I thought police officers, cops just don't come at your door and pick you up unless you commit a crime. I thought there was some sort of justice. And now I know that it's just weak inductions. Justice for all, another weak induction. It's a lie. There is no justice. Judges do whatever they want. Cops are criminals. I filed several police reports of the crimes that were committed. The police would not do anything, write reports, and says, oh, we're sorry. Yeah, we see several police reports. We see the crime that was committed. They took note of the crimes that were committed, but they wouldn't do anything about it. The state attorney's office in Sarasota says, if the police don't walk the paper over, we won't do no arrests on the case. So, the state attorney's office won't arrest her for committing perjury. Police won't walk the papers literally across the street. It's one big corruption. Congress is corruption. The cops are corruptions. And the majority of judges, they're all corrupt. Attorneys don't go to none. They're corrupt. Very few that aren't corrupt. Everybody's getting paid. Either you're playing ball or you're out. If you're not going to play ball with them, you're out. It's not going to work. We need our country back.